You're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson, episode 152. Hey there, you're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Henderson, and on this show, we talk about improving your business, life, or both by having amazing and rich conversations with brilliant guests who will inspire you and who will give you tips and tricks to help you grow both in life and in business. Well, hey there, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ange, from Angela Henderson Consulting, where I'm an international award-winning business consultant and coach who has helped thousands of amazing women business owners get all the pieces in place to have consistent 4- and 5-figure months and then on to 6- and 7+ figure years without burning out in the process. Amazing human, I don't even know where to start. On the podcast today, I literally get to interview my all-time favorite author that has helped shape me into a better human, a better business consultant, a better mother, a better friend. You get the picture. This amazing human, Bob Burg. Bob Burg co-authored my all-time favorite book, The Go-Giver. Over 1 million copies sold, and if I'd have to say, 1 million+ different lives changed. It's a book that turns business on its head. It's a book that allows you to go back and put values at the core of everything. In fact, how providing value leads to success and profitability. I'm like a kid in a candy store today with today's episode because it is truly such an honor to be able to be connected with Bob Burg and be able to share with you the awesomeness that comes with him. On the podcast today, we're going to talk about what are the 5 laws of stratospheric success, how leading with value and listening to your customers will lead to creating a profitable business. It sounds simple, and it is simple, but yet so many of you that are listening right now are potentially overcomplicating things in life and in business, and it doesn't have to be that way. So truly stop what you're doing. Take the time to listen to this podcast. Why? Because it will make you a better person. I promise. So get ready for all levels of awesomeness. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you, Angela. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I'm not going to lie about it, Bob, but I'm super pumped to have you here today for so many reasons. I mean, we initially met in Clubhouse, which is a platform at time of recording this podcast that I actually haven't been on since probably the last time and first time we connected. And when I was on Clubhouse, again, I at that stage wasn't on very regularly, and I saw your name come up. I was like, no way, it can't be the Bob, not the Go-Giver Bob. So I quickly, like you should have seen how fast my fingers went to get into that room. And when I was on Clubhouse, I always had this thing that I'd always just raise my hand because I wanted to be able to give back any way that I could. And then I saw you and we had an opportunity to connect, and then we connected after. And so I'm super grateful to have you here. The book, The Go-Giver, has been by far the book that has changed not only my business and the way I think about business, but has equally contributed just to being a better human collectively. And
wow. Thank you.
I'm excited for the listeners to be able to have the opportunity to hear your wisdom today. But before we get into the interview, I always like to ask my guests a fun question as a way that the audience can get to know you a little bit more. And I can see, obviously, the audience when they are listening to this can't, but you've got an amazing setup of a bookshelf. There are thousands of awesome books sitting behind you. And obviously, because we're talking about your book that you co-authored today, The Go-Giver, I'd like to know, what is the most influential book that you ever read and why?
Well, so the reason that that's a difficult question, Angela, is because there are books on different topics that have added to my life in certain ways. So it would be very, very difficult to say that there's one particular book that has done that. I would say if there's one book that I would suggest to people, because I think it's the best book to prepare a person to understand the basic truths of life and how to navigate your way through it. It's a book most people have never heard of. It's called The Secret to Selling Anything. And while it's written about sales, it's really not so much about sales. It's about understanding human nature. It's about understanding and respecting and working within human nature, understanding why people make the decisions that they make and do the things they do. And it was a book that was it was written in the 60s, but it wasn't published until the author passed away back, I think it was 2007 or 2008, when his widow found a couple of hard drives. Yeah. And it was actually 2 different hard drives he was doing just for training for his salespeople. And so it wasn't even meant to be published. But by the way, when it says the secret of selling anything, the secret is find out what people want and help them to get it. That's the big secret, right? As he says, the secret to selling need not be a secret. And, so when you understand that people are going to make decisions because basically they believe by doing so, it will bring them closer to happiness based on their understanding of happiness and within the limited amount of options they believe they have. Okay. Then you understand why ultimately someone is going to make a decision to do something or not do something. And it's just a beautifully written book. His name is Harry Browne, Browne. And I actually did a review of the book at the Burg.com blog just under The Secret of Selling.
All right, perfect. We'll make sure we include those in all those links. And you raise an important factor there. Anyone who's been in my world for a while know I'm all about treat people like humans. At the end of the day, there's so many people I feel, Bob, that are just going for the transaction. Where's the next transaction coming? Where there's the next transaction? But behind every transaction is a human. A human is wanting, as you said, happiness. And happiness can be defined on so many levels. There's like the external things. They want freedom. They want more money. But there's also that internal sense of belonging and fulfillment that they want too, right?
Yeah, it's it's really the one of the dictionary definitions of happiness is the mental feeling of well-being. And when you think about it, that's something that when you have that, you're happy. I personally define happiness as a genuine and ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with one's values. Now, I don't think we have to take it that deep in terms of, when we're in that, the process of helping someone, whether we're talking about sales or whether we're talking about helping someone make a decision in life that they need to make and they want our guidance. But it really, it comes down to, as you say so eloquently, understanding that they're a human. Okay. They have feelings and they want to be respected and they want to be cared about and they want to be understood. So I think that's why, when I define selling as simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it. And to do that, we need to be willing to listen, ask questions and listen not just to speak, but listen to really, really get what they're about and clarify and make sure, because we understand that we see the world different from different viewpoints, right? Different set of beliefs, different points of understanding, and what we think they mean might not be what they mean at all, which is why we need to be able to tactfully and respectfully clarify and make sure we're all, on the same wavelength.
And I also think that you mentioned they need to be, I think, there's a lot of talk about like know, like, and trust. And of course, I think people have to know, like, and trust you. But I also think it's not just about us. I think it's about us being able to make sure that the people who are listening to us and know, like, and trusting us are being seen and being heard, right? Because if they feel seen and they feel heard and they feel listened to, they're also more likely to want to work with us because of the fact that we haven't put our own needs first. We've actually checked our ego at the door and allowed them the opportunity to tell us what they need.
Sure. Well, and a big part of eliciting people's trust is, doing exactly what you said. So, that's a big part. So, what I say is all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, here's the thing. There's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking for ways to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the Go-Giver, told the protege Joe, to make your win all about the other person's win. Now, again, this does not mean you're being self-sacrificial. It doesn't mean you're being a martyr. It doesn't mean, not at all. It means, though, that you're understanding that to the degree your focus is on that other person, that's the degree that person is going to have that trust for you.
And you mentioned there about the book, The Go-Giver, and that's one of the main things we're going to be talking about today. for you is, did you notice something when you were working with businesses or in organizations that was a defining moment for you and the co-author to come together and create this book going, man, we need to look at alternative business principles. We need to look at other ways that people are doing business, because there isn't always this one way that people might be talking about. Was there a moment, or how did it all come about?
Well, I had a book out for years called Endless Referrals, and the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was really written for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service, knew it brought, exceptional value to others, but they weren't necessarily comfortable with the idea of going out into their local communities and developing the types of relationships with people that would cause people to want to do business with them directly and refer business to them. So Endless Referrals was really it was a system, right, for how to do that. And it was about developing those know, like, and trust relationships. But so that's something I had been, teaching for a long time. And it's how I built my sales career. And I think, when you notice people who are sustainably successful, those are the things they do. And so, but I always thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take that basic premise and turn it into a parable? Because again, Endless Referrals was a traditional how-to book. I think parables, which are stories, they really connect on a deeper level with people. I think, stories connect on a very heart-to-heart, kind of level. And that's why I asked John David Mann, who was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for, who was, known at that time within that small niche. Now this guy's got so many books he's co-authored with many authors, and that he's ghostwritten, co-authored, and so forth. But back then, very few people knew of John's genius as a writer. Fortunately, I was one of them who did. And I asked John to be the lead writer and the storyteller, of the story. So it was really, we kind of went through and we said, so what are, and, John was a great entrepreneur in his day. And he and I have studied success in our individual businesses for years. I mean, and as we were really going through the laws that we wanted to include, it was basically, we're saying, so what are those things that people have always done, okay, but since time immemorial, so for as long as there have been people buying and selling, okay, from the, bazaars and ancient Babylon to, whatever, okay, that successful people did, whether or not they even knew they were doing it, because some people do things intuitively and other, right?
Yep.
Right. And so there were those 5 aspects, which we named the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity, that successful people, sustainably successful people, always did those. And if they did all 5 of those, they were successful. If they didn't, then they typically weren't. And so that's really how that came. So it wasn't so much that it was doing things, that it was anything new. I mean, it wasn't. But maybe in terms of differently, only in the way that most people, unfortunately, have not been taught to sell and conduct business that way. And hopefully we've been able to, and there's many other, some great books out there that have also taught, the wonderful principles. We're certainly not the only one, but that, and so, we felt hopefully we could make a difference in that regard.
Now, you've mentioned the 5 laws briefly there. Can you go a little bit deeper on them to give individuals a little bit more of a touch point, a little bit more understanding of those? Because I can't tell you, Bob, how many times I've cited these laws on other people's podcasts. I'll be like, hold on a minute, I just have to Google it just to make sure I'm reading it. And I always obviously cite you guys. I was like, if there's anything you do it, I reference you guys in my keynotes around these 5 laws. But the podcast, people have heard them from me before, because they're actually so simple. It almost feels like, how did people not know this? Like, I almost feel like at the day we're born, these laws should be infused in us, because to me, they're common sense, right? But the thing is we're getting mixed messages on the internet from other marketing gurus about X, Y, and Z. And I won't name people, but you know what I'm saying. And I just go, hold on, we've lost our core values somewhere. Not all people, but some people. So I'd really like us just to talk about these 5 laws of stratospheric success, so that people can have a better understanding and start to maybe have their own aha moments, like I did when I was reading The Go-Giver.
Well, thank you. So the law of value says your true worth, and this is in the business sense, of course, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear that, it's sort of counterintuitive, right? I mean, give more in value than I take in payment. I mean, it sounds all nicey nice and everything, but it also sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. Give more in value than I take in payment. So to understand this, we simply need to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth to another person that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit. So let me give you a very quick example I like to use. You hire an accountant to do your taxes. And this accountant charges you, we'll just name a round figure, $1,000. That is her fee. Literally, it's her price, $1,000. Okay. But what value does she give you that makes this so worthwhile? Okay. Well, first, through her years of study, her work, her willingness to get to know you and know about you and dig deep into your business and understand what makes you tick and what you're looking to accomplish, she's able to save you $5,000 in taxes. She saves you countless hours of time. She also provides you and your family with the peace of mind and the security of knowing it was done correctly. So we see here that she actually gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for $1,000 fee or price. So she gave you more in value than she took in payment. So obviously you feel great about it, but she also made an excellent profit, because to her, it was worth it to her to trade her time, her energy, her intellect, her knowledge, her wisdom and skills for this $1,000. So in any, free market based exchange, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. In any free market based exchange, there are always two profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. That's the difference between price and value, right? And why you give more in value than what you take in payment. You make a great profit. Okay. But you're still giving such an amazing, immense value-based experience that it works out for everyone. Now, the key point, though, is how did this happen? This exchange took place not because your accountant was focused on the money she was going to get from you. Okay. She was focused on the immense value she was going to give to you. The money she received was a very natural result. So that's why we say money is simply an echo of value. The value must be the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you've provided.
And that value is going to be so important, because, again, if you listen to what your customers need, right, then more than likely they're going to see the value without you having to do all these manipulative tactics, if you have a good way and a good understanding of what they need. Would you agree or disagree?
Well, you should. Yeah. Well, first of all, you shouldn't do manipulative tactics anyway. If it takes manipulative tactics.
There's lots of people teaching them, right?
Oh, no, I understand. I understand
that's the problem.
No. But if you discover, the most important part in any sales presentation is the discovery. If you can discover what this person needs, wants, or desires, and you really come to a deep understanding of this, okay, then, by the time you do your presentation, what you're doing is you match the benefits of what you offer with what they need, want, and desire, if they're really there. If they're not, they shouldn't be buying from you. But let's assume they are. Let's say you're able to do what what this person. Then, by the time when it comes to closing the sale, you're simply asking them to do what they've already told you they want to do. Okay. You still have to ask, but it's, you don't need any fancy, tricky kind of, no, not at all. So that's why, sales is really placing your focus on them.
You said there, ask for the sale, and I won't get too much into sales tactics today, but how important is it for people? They're genuinely showing up as good humans. They're providing value. They're listening to the people. And I see it day in and day out with my own clients. They're freaking forgetting to ask for the sale, Bob, right? Like they literally, I'm like,
Still need
like,
to, you generally need to ask. I mean, does the other person ever say, okay, I've heard enough. Let's do this. Yeah. I mean, every so often I would not build a sales career on that premise. No, you need to ask. And a lot of times what happens is they forget to ask. Really, they're afraid to ask. They have a fear of
the fear starts. Yes, exactly right.
And so closing you don't have to do anything tricky, anything. No, you simply ask, so would you like to get started, or whatever it is that you're doing? You have to ask. Mm-hmm. Okay. You generally do have to ask, but remember, if you've built up that value sufficiently, okay, mm-hmm. if the value is up here and the price you're asking is down here, they're going to buy. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now remember, value is always in the eyes of the beholder. So it's not what you or I feel is of value about what we do. It's not what we think they should think is of value about what we do. It's what they feel is of value. And that's why, we always have to remember that when we ask and we listen, from their point of view. And that's why we need to clarify and make sure that we're understanding what they're saying.
Exactly. And again, and we just keep going back to what they're understanding, what they need, what they want, right? Like, it's not about us, it's about them. And if we can do that, again, we will become profitable because we've put their needs first. So if we move on to the second law, what's our second law?
Well, this is the law of compensation. And this one says that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives we touch with the exceptional value we provide, the more money with which we'll be rewarded. So just like your accountant in the first example, she did a great job of giving you more in value than she took in payment. So if you're her client, the chances are you appreciate her, you would do business with her again. And you would probably refer her to others. Well, her other clients feel the same way. So our accountant is very quickly amassing what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors. And if she continues to add that kind of exceptional value to the lives of more and more people, her income will continue to grow and grow. You may recall in the story, Nicole Martin, the CEO, told Joe that the law of value represents your potential income. But it's the second law, which talks about the number of lives you impact with that value. So we could say that exceptional value plus significant reach equals very high compensation.
And right there, I always talk about this too with some of my own clients, is that when you serve people with value, you used it as an army, but I say they become your marketing agents for you. Sure. And there's no better, in my opinion, way of a conversion is when someone else connects you by themselves, right? You start to have conversations, because I believe conversations equal conversions. And when you start to have these beautiful open conversations, those conversations I just have found in my own experience are so much easier when someone will introduce you for you versus having to go. And that's why these marketing, or you call them the army, or I call them like they're marketing agents. They're walking around doing your marketing for you. It's a reduction in Facebook ads, Pinterest, and you're getting more qualified leads. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that referrals have many, many benefits to it. Among them are that it's simply easier to set the appointment because you're going in on borrowed influence, right? With referred prospects, it's price is less of an issue. Doesn't mean it's a non-issue, but it's less of an issue. Again, borrowed interest, borrowed trust. You're already there, with the premise that you are a professional. That's why you are recommended highly. And so you're able to sell on high value as opposed to low price. Selling on low price is always a losing proposition. You want to sell on high. If you sell on low price, you're a commodity. If you sell on high value, you're a resource. A referral obviously helps position you that way. With referred prospects, it's easier to complete the sale. Borrowed trust, obviously, what we call vicarious experience. This person's never done business with you, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, hey, this is the only person you need to see. They're great at what they do. They're a top professional. They'll have your best interests at heart, right? And then another great benefit of referrals is that this person is already of the mindset that that's how you do business, since that's how they met you. So, in their world, you meet people through referrals. You sell on high value rather than low price. You complete the transaction, and you are then referred to others. So absolutely, I'm a huge believer, and I even wrote a book on it. So yeah.
And how much of this do you think impacts law number 3, which is the law of influence?
Well, law number 3 impacts the number of referrals you'll get. Right. because this one says, your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Again, not in a martyrish way or a self-sacrificial way, right? No, not at all. It's understanding, though, that again, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And that, again, there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely making it about them. And we go back to our same theme.
When you talk about law 4, which we'll get into, the law of authenticity, can you define before we get into the law itself, how are you defining authenticity?
Oh, I would say authenticity is acting in a way that's congruent with your values.
Yeah, because again, there's so many people, so many different views, and I just think for the purposes of this. And so then the 4th law is of the law of authenticity. Can you tell us a little bit about this law?
Yeah, well, so the law of authenticity says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And in this part of the story, Deborah Davenport shared a very important lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you, as we like to say, show up as yourself, right, day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. And why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting.
So it's funny you say that I don't know if you can see, I just giggled there for a minute because I was speaking to my dad today before the call. And I said, Dad, I said, you won't believe this. I said, I get to interview my most favorite author in the world today. He's like, well, kid, I hope you're going to scrub up nice. And I was like, Dad, I'm rolling in a hoodie and my hair's in a bun. He's like, no, kid, you got it. And I was like, Dad, this is who I am. This is what they get. This is how I show up. I said, it's no disrespect to Bob, but I said, I'm just showing up the way I do. And he's like, I don't know you today, kid. He's like, we're giggling, we're bantering back and forth. But it is one of those things like, I've been told by other coaches, you need to up your professional game. I'm like, well, I'm a multi-6-figure business owner and I'm still staying true to me. I was like, that's actually why people are connecting, is that when they're on a sales call with me, this is what you get. And I'm going to be the same person you're getting when we're starting to work together. Like, I'm not changing. And that's okay. You either like it or you don't. And that's all right. But yeah, so my dad and I were giggling today. He's like, so he's like, so you're showing up in your authentic way, Angela. And I was like, yes, Father. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I am today. So yes. And now the last law, the law of receptivity. Can you tell us a little bit about this law?
Yeah, this one says that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And this one really just simply means that we need to understand that, yeah, we breathe out, but we also need to breathe in, right? We breathe out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving. We breathe in, which is receiving, right? None of these are one or the other. They're all ands. Okay. And it's the same that, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts, despite the messages from the world around us, which are not even mixed messages. They're just horribly negative messages about money, about abundance, about prosperity, about business. It's, it's just the way it is. And so that can really get in a person's head. It can really get into the unconscious, and you can have all these unhealthy thoughts about, worthiness and about money and about what happens if I have, what we like to say is giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. It's not, are you a giver or a receiver? No, you're a giver and a receiver. Obviously the focus has to be on the giving. That's the laws of life. We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap. We give before we receive. That's, those are laws, right? But But we do that understanding that as we give, we are setting in motion everything, as we touch the lives of lots of people, as we place the interest of others first, understanding that they're buying for their reasons, not our reasons. As we come at it from our true, authentic core, we have created that benevolent context for success. And when we focus on the giving and allow the receiving, we will receive. We'll receive in abundance. We'll receive an abundance. And, that's where we want our mindsets to be.
Now, I've got an inkling what you might say, but I'm going to see what your thoughts are on this one. Obviously, we've gone over all of the 5 laws of stratospheric success. So the law of value, the law of compensation, the law of influence, the law of authenticity, the law of receptivity. My question is, you have seen an enormous amount of businesses and organizations. You've equally spoken on so many different stages. Your book has sold over 1 million+ copies. My question, though, is of all of these laws, which is the hardest one for individuals to accept and or apply both in business and in life?
Oh, without question, it's the law of receptivity.
Yeah, and why do you think those, are there any core things, or I know you've talked a little bit about it, but are you is there any, if you had 10 people in a room, are there any kind of common characteristics that you see?
Most people don't even know why they have trouble receiving.
Interesting.
Because it's very much an unconscious thing. Remember, the messages we get from, whether it's combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, the culture around us, the messages about money and prosperity are so awful. And that, that again, people grow up with this misperception about money, and that it's, in and of itself, it makes people do, again, there's bad people in the world who do bad things, but that's the exception. And so, but because of that, it gets into people's heads and it gets into their unconscious. That's the most insidious thing of all. They don't realize that that's what they're thinking. If you asked these 10 people in the room, or 5 people in the room, would you like to earn a whole lot of money as a result of providing immense value to others? I'd say, sure, of course I would. But watch how many people sabotage that situation when it comes. Well, that's unconscious. That's not conscious. That's a big reason why I truly believe that we should be making a conscious, proactive study of prosperity. There are great speakers out there and great authors and practitioners of prosperity. Some of them, are Randy Gage and Bob Proctor and Sharon Lechter and Ellen Rogan and David Nagel and Ken Honda of Japan. And I'm sure Australia has a whole bunch of great ones who speak on that. Well, study them. Because we get the garbage from, at least in the States, we get so much horrible messaging about money, from whatever. And that comes to us all the time. We need to proactively make sure that the information we're taking in is filling our heads with the right information.
And also, would you also say the willingness to do the internal work too, Bob? So, for example, is I've been working with my current coach. I've been doing hypnotherapy sessions every week. Now, if someone said I was going to be doing hypnotherapy, Bob, I told my dad, he almost rolled over dying, right? Because neither of us, I would never have accepted that into my world, right? But again, it's been super interesting 6 weeks. I've got another 6 weeks left, because some of the things that you said, if those 10 people were standing in line and you're like, hey, do you want to make more? They're going, yes, I do. But they're going to self-sabotage because they don't even know why they're self-sabotaging, where the root is. Some of the things that are coming up in my hypnotherapy sessions, I've never even said in my freaking life, Bob. Do you know what I mean? One of the things was a client said something to me. I was waking up in the middle of the night going, well, do other clients of mine think and that's not how I think. And then what came out of the hypnotherapy session was that I felt like I wasn't enough. So then during that session, they said, well, where did this stem from? And it stemmed from this incident with my mom. But I reckon my family and clients would all say, Ange would never say I'm not enough. But that's where some of this stuff was rooted. But because I had the ability or willingness to work internal and start looking at some of those things, I'm going to have more of a place of abundance and be willing to receive. What are your thoughts about that?
There's no question about that. Success begins on the inside. It manifests itself outwardly, but it begins with the work you're willing to do on yourself. And so I think I applaud you for doing that. I think that is just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it's not like the last 18 months, I've had 5 significant people die in the last 3 years. My brother, my grandmother, a father type figure, a lot of amazing humans. And I thought, in order for me to show up and be my best self, I have to heal internally. And so I've been working with healers and, like I said, hypnotherapists, people I would never have considered 2 or 3 years ago. But obviously we get older, we get more gray hair, and we start to change, and we get a bit smarter, Bob. So again, it's been an amazing revolution. And I encourage anyone, your external world is a direct reflection of your internal world. And it's not fun and it's not pretty, but I feel you have to keep working on that. You don't ever stop working on it. And as you continue to grow and become more successful, there's going to be other things that will show up in the form of sabotage that you've never even thought of. So now, listen, I obviously, for those that could see me, as I'm smiling from ear to ear, because I'm beyond grateful for the opportunity to have you on the podcast today. For those out there who want to connect more with you, want to understand how they could work with you more, can you share with us a little bit about the best way of how they could work with you and how they can connect with you post this interview?
Yeah, the best way is just to visit Burg, BURG.com. And just scroll down to see some of the resources that we have for you, and if there's something you like, you can always explore a bit deeper.
Fantastic. My last question, Bob, is what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started out in business?
Oh, what do I know now that I wish I knew? I think there's probably tons of things, but I think it's really just you don't necessarily know what you don't know. When you're younger, you alluded to that yourself. We don't think that we need to do these things to work on ourselves in certain ways because we already know the answer. And I've been in business for 30 years now, 32 years, whatever it is. And I know there's a lot of things when I started out that, I thought I knew the answer to that I didn't. I didn't even know the question.
Yep. Listen, you have made a huge impact on my role as a business consultant, but also just as genuinely being a better human. So thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. My team and I will be putting together all the show notes for this episode at angelahenderson.com.au, and we'll ensure to include your links in there and your book and your resources and everything like that. So again, thank you so much for your time today. And for the rest of you, have an amazing day, no matter where you are in the world. And I look forward to you joining me again next week for another awesome episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. Thanks again, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson. www.angelahenderson.com.au